Hey folks, bit of a late episode for you guys this week due to the Thanksgiving holiday here in the US, but I'm not going to keep it from you a second longer. So, unless you've been living under a rock, you probably know that the Microsoft Ignite conference happened in San Francisco earlier this month. Now, there's always a ton of announcements and news that come out of Microsoft Ignite every year. So, I've got Paul Schnackenberg on the show today, and today, Paul and I are going to go through the Microsoft Ignite Book of News. And what this is, it's basically a list of all the major announcements that were made across all the various product areas at Microsoft during the event. So we've got that and lots more in today's episode of SysAdmin Weekly. Hey everyone, it's a new week. That means it's time for another episode of SysAdmin Weekly. This is your podcast by sysadmins for sysadmins and dedicated to all the tireless tech folks working out there in the trenches day in and day out to keep the digital world spinning. As always, I'm your host, Andy Serwich, and I've got Paul Schnackenberg back with me here. How's it going, Paul?
I'm good, Andy. How are you?
Doing good. It's good to have you back. I think it's been, I think since the Halloween episode was the last time you were on, which
Yep.
I got to say, that was a fun one. I'm looking forward to next year's SysAdmin Horror Stories episode already. So that was a good one. So a lot of good stories on that one between the group. And I have to say, folks, if you have not seen our Halloween episode from this year, be sure to check it out. There are data center floods and backup woes and everything in between. So it was
That was a
not
great
for the
episode.
faint of heart.
And it was a great episode. It was really a lot of fun with the shenanigans that happen in IT. So it was some good.
There
horror
are
stuff.
Shenanigans, indeed. There are lots of shenanigans in IT. So anyway, good to see you as always, my friend. And we have a good topic lined up today. So as of this recording, it is November 21st, November 22nd for Paul because time zones, right? But Microsoft Ignite happened just a couple of days ago. And of course, if you don't know what Microsoft Ignite is, it's Microsoft's big annual, IT conference, basically. Their non-developer conference because they have Microsoft Build for that, right? Ignite is more of your IT pros, sysadmin audience, that type of thing, cloud engineer, et cetera, et cetera. So they always have a litany of announcements. And what I thought we would do today, instead of, the usual talking points I put together for an episode, we're going to scroll through the Book of News. And if you don't know what the Book of News is, whenever Microsoft has Microsoft Ignite, they always release the Microsoft Ignite Book of News. And it's basically a list of all the new stuff that they've announced, right? So if you're a journalist, you can go and quickly find information about something that you might want to talk about in an article or something like that. So anyway, it's really good for use cases like this and for, us sysadmins out there because it's everything that's new all packed into one place with relevant links. And if you don't have time to sit down and watch 20, 30 different sessions that happen throughout the week, well, it's a nice summary and it's great for situations like this. So I will put a link to the Book of News in the show notes, folks. But before we get to that, we have, of course, our regular recurring segments that we always start with. And I guess I'll get my plugs out of the way first. So if you're new to the show, welcome. We have a good time here. We talk about a bunch of sysadmin stuff. And, well, if you want to get a quick list of all the various links associated with the show, you can go to www.sysadminweekly.com. And that'll get you, like I said, all the links. We also have a companion newsletter that I try to keep updated on the regular, but when life gets busy, sometimes it gets pushed back a week or so. But you can find that companion newsletter at newsletter.sysadminweekly.com. And we include a bunch of great community links out there, some commentary by yours truly, and a lot of great tools and all kinds of fun stuff. So highly suggest you check that out. Again, newsletter.sysadminweekly.com. And with that, we go to our regular recurring segments. And of course, we will start with our News React segment. This is the segment of the show where my co-host and I, we pick some news item that caught our eye from the last week or two, and we discuss it right here on the show. And I guess selfishly, Paul, I don't have a very long one to mention, more of just a, hey, everyone, keep an eye out type of thing. And it probably comes as no surprise to those regular viewers of the show that my News React item is, surprise, security related, right? Because that's, the part of the industry that I sit in. And, well, this is going to sound familiar and maybe a little bit different all at the same time. CrowdStrike is in the security news again. And unless you were sitting under a rock or something, you probably remember the CrowdStrike incident from, I think it was last year, wasn't it, Paul? Yeah,
last year. And since then, we call them ClownStrike, not CrowdStrike. Just remember that.
Yep, that's true. That's their new name in the industry, unfortunately. Sorry to anybody from CrowdStrike that may be listening to this show. So I'm sure you've probably heard all the jokes, but I have, I don't want to say fond memories, maybe vivid memories of that particular incident, because it took down, I forget what it was. It was like a noticeable percentage of machines in the world, right? When that incident happened.
8.5 million from memory, Windows servers mostly. So
it was a lot. And I was at LAX at the time trying to get on an airplane. So that was great fun. And that is, of course, sarcasm, just in case anybody's curious. Anyway, but they are in the news again. And this headline caught my eye. It is actually from today, November 21st. Article from bleepingcomputer.com. I'll be sure to put it in the show notes. But the headline reads, and I quote, CrowdStrike catches insider feeding information to hackers. Okay, well, if you drill into it a little bit more here, basically, American cybersecurity firms CrowdStrike has confirmed that an insider shared screenshots taken on an internal system with hackers after they were leaked on Telegram by the Scattered Lapsus Hunters threat actors. Now, CrowdStrike goes on to say that systems were not breached as a result of the incident and customer data is not compromised. And here they're quoting somebody from CrowdStrike, a spokesperson here. We identified and terminated a suspicious insider last month following an internal investigation that determined he shared pictures of his computer screen externally. So, okay, insider threat, right? Which I feel like these days is far more common than it used to be. Of course, maybe we're just more aware of it now than we used to be. Is probably realistically the thing.
Yeah.
But anytime I see CrowdStrike pop up in security news, even if it's a seemingly, I don't want to say benign, because I mean, information was leaked, even if it's just a screenshot. This is one that I'm just going to keep an eye on here over the next couple of weeks, because hopefully nothing comes of it. But anytime there's an incident, a security incident, especially with a security vendor, all of us in the security space, we tend to take note. So anyway, I'll put that in the show notes, folks, in case you want to check it out. But Paul, what do you got for us this week?
So you may have remembered, it was a month ago, but it feels like it was only yesterday. So AWS went down. As you may remember, they had a fairly big outage. I have an NSFW joke. I'm wondering whether I could tell that on this show or not, actually, on that topic. But let's come back to that. Let me talk about the news.
Okay.
So there is a community called The Void, and they do surveys, and they're all about improving resiliency and incident reporting and understanding what leads to outages, because it's a very different world, right? Like when you and I were in IT, sure, we had outages. We probably had more outages, but that was like our business servers went down, or the network connection went down, or power went, something. But it was sort of limited to us, right? And apart from our customers, or our clients' customers, if we were an MSP or something, nobody would have noticed, right? It wouldn't have been a big deal. You just get it back into business as soon as possible. Nowadays, of course, we have these gigantic outages that affect millions of people, right? CrowdStrike, for example. But these cloud outages where so many things are so interdependent on all these cloud services that when they go down, like it's a noticeable effect. So I'll test our new share function here, and I'm going to share
Yeah.
this article here. The link, if you're on a podcast, the link to this will be in the show notes, and you can have a look. Anyway, so I've followed the Void for years, and it's just interesting information to find out about how different companies approach outages and how transparent they are. So this shows the AWS US East 1 incident, and the size of the bubble tells you how long the duration of the outage. So AWS goes down, right? They were down for 14 hours and 32 minutes. And then you can see here Duolingo, you can see Venmo, Coinbase, BuildKite, Zero, so 25 hours.
Wow.
That's incredible. Okay, so they went
Yeah.
a really long time. You've got Ring here. We've got Canva, Zoom, Atlassian, Firehide. I've never heard of them, but I have heard of Slack.
Wow.
There's some fairly big companies here. What I've got, Launch Darkly. I have no idea who they are, but they were down for nearly.
Salesforce is down there.
Salesforce is down here. They were for
Yeah.
14 hours. So it looks like these guys are the biggest at 38 hours.
Wow.
These ones are 28 hours. Autodesk for 18 hours. These are big companies, right? Like a lot of people rely on these companies. So it's just interesting to see how things are connected. And you can also see connections between them, right? Because it's not just that AWS went down, so then whatever company, Circle CI, that I'm hovering over now, went down. It's also that other companies then rely on them, so they also go down. So you see the sort of graph on how things are related. So I just think it's interesting. Azure Front Door had an outage a week or two later, and I'll just mention it. I'll make sure to put it in the show notes. They do, for their sort of major outages or more impactful outages, they actually do video webinar retrospectives, I suppose you'd call them, or going
Nice.
through what happened.
Like a
So they're very
postmortem type of thing.
yeah, a postmortem. That's right, and they obviously do written reports, so you can go read them. But they also have a video conference webinar style thing where they go through what happened and talk to different people, key stakeholders, and ask them follow up questions. So I think that transparency is really important. I don't know whether AWS do, but I think it's important for the cloud providers to be as transparent as possible about this sort of stuff.
For sure. And I a lot of them, I feel like, are doing better than they used to. But as you and I have talked about sometimes on this podcast and other videos on other platforms, you and I have talked about this before too, and that there could always be a little more transparency from cloud providers from time to time. But yeah, we mentioned Azure and AWS. Cloudflare just had an outage a day, 2-3 days ago as of this recording. And I know that because SysAdminWeekly.com was offline, and another site that I have been working on lately was offline as well too. So not that, that really impacted me a whole lot, but I don't remember what I was doing. I was checking I was going to make a minor change to SysAdminWeekly.com, and I'm like, well, Cloudflare is having issues, so I guess I'm not doing that right now. Anyway.
And Matthew Prince threw an engineer under the bus, and I think that is completely missing the point. If a single engineer can make a mistake and that can cause an impact that big, I mean, I have read the report, so I know sort of the technical details as far as they've revealed them, and we don't need to go into that now. That's just waste of time. But you have a problem with your process, not with a single engineer, because humans will make mistakes. Yep. I've been following a lot of airline safety information from pilots and how they go through accidents and incidents and stuff. It's just become a little hobby, so I listen to YouTube videos from various. Yeah, it's really interesting because their approach is very much, you can always blame the pilots, right? You can always say, oh, it was the pilot's fault, right? But that's not the point, because you don't build a safe culture. In this case, we talk about cybersecurity inside of a company by blaming people, because
Right.
people are going to stop reporting things. They're going to go underground. They're going to keep quiet, and
Yep.
you build the culture of fear. That doesn't help, right? That doesn't help anybody. You need what they have in the airline industry, which is a just culture, where what they call it, which means that everybody can speak up and everybody can say, "Hey, there's something funky here," or
Yeah.
this is a problem." Even if it's a minor thing, it can be easily corrected. And that's why we have two pilots in all commercial flights, right? Because the first officer is there not as sort of an administrative assistant that they might have been sort of 30 years ago or something, but they're actually there to monitor what's going on and see if, pilot seems a bit tired, check in, or that's an odd thing to do at this flight level, whatever, and just
Right.
raise the things, right?
Yep.
So and we need that culture in companies. We don't need a culture of fear. We need a culture of being able to speak up about anything, but certainly about safety issues. I think that's
Yeah. And I,
pretty important.
es- especially when it's a situation where AWS goes down. I mean, just a portion of AWS, the US East 1, and it takes down a noticeable portion of the internet. I mean, that's talk. We in the sysadmin world, we are always trying to eliminate single points of failure. And I mean, there's all kinds of redundancy in AWS. Don't get me wrong, but when we're talking at company scale here, data center scale, kind of feels like a single point of failure when a problem at one vendor can take down so much. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And their retort, or Azure's retort, would be, well, the people who build their infrastructure, like these big companies, to rely on a single region, they haven't done it right. They should not have an infrastructure that's built. Like if you
That's
have
true.
two virtual servers and 10
That's
users
true.
in one region, that's probably okay. But if you're, I don't know what, Slack or something, and a region going down brings down your entire infrastructure, you're having a problem with your architecture. You need to do a multi-region thing.
That's true.
Which is easy to say, but not so easy to do.
Right. And I will make a counterpoint that if we're going to talk about Entra, there have been times where Entra has fallen over globally, and it didn't
Mhm.
matter how things were architected, right? So,
It's true. However, that does not happen anymore. It used to
right.
happen 6, 7 years ago,
Yep.
and I've seen some really interesting, both public and NDA webinars where they talk about this and how they re-architected Entra and how it's now much more sharded. So
Right.
even if an infrastructure goes down, it'll affect some businesses, but it won't affect the overall like it did back then.
I think you and I talked about this on
Mhm. I
previous
think we,
episode. I remember which one, but I'll
yeah.
pick up the link to that particular. I remember you shared a resource with that. I'll put that in the show notes too because that was a
Yeah,
good one if I remember
that
right.
was a really interesting one. All
So
right, so if you're in the car now, or you're listening to this on your speaker, and you have little ears around, you might want to mute for the next 30 seconds. But the joke I heard was, "I wish your name was AWS US East 1 so that I could go down on you randomly." You could turn the volume up a
oh,
little bit.
that's all right. That's a good one. Oh, hold on. So, all right. So that's our news react segment. We have Nerd Hour up next, and of course, if you're new to the show, you're asking, "Wait, Nerd Hour? Isn't the show like an hour long?" Well, Nerd Hour, it doesn't take an hour. There's a whole joke behind the whole reason why it's called Nerd Hour. But basically, this is the short portion of the show where my co-host and I we talk about the geeky, nerdy things that we've been working on in, either our professional or personal life. And Paul, I went first for News React. I'll let you go first for Nerd Hour. What do you got?
This is going to be really short and really on topic. So, for years, there is a guy called Michael DeRoy. I probably butchered his name. Really sorry about that. That's a Dutch or Belgian name, something like that. Anyway, he's had a script going, which is freely available on GitHub. It's a PowerShell script called get-event session. I use it after every Ignite, every build, and other conferences as well, but certainly those big ones. You simply run this and it downloads the PowerPoint slides when they're being shared and the video recordings of every session. So instead of having to go to the website and click on the button that you want to download a particular session, you can literally just run this script and download them all. And then you can keep rerunning the script as they add more. So at the moment, I have run the script twice and it has downloaded there's still 981 slide decks and 833 videos to come, but it has got me 31 slide decks and 154 videos. So obviously a lot of those I'm just going to be deleting afterwards because I don't need them, but some of them are there. So
yeah, very cool. Yeah, I'll definitely include that in the show notes as well too. So in terms of my nerdy geeky stuff I've been working on, if you listen to last week's episode, you know that I recently attended KubeCon in Atlanta, which is a distributed systems architecture conference, right? It all revolves around Kubernetes, and it's my first time being at that show. Now, all of my experience with Kubernetes and distributed systems have been all very cloud focused because it's cloud native, right? It's been many years since I actually took the time to spin up my own Kubernetes cluster, in my lab. And well, I did that yesterday, day before, and it's much easier than it was in the old days when Kubernetes first came out on the scene. I think I had a full cluster set up with one control plane node and 3 agent nodes. I don't know, in an hour and 15 or something like that.
wow.
And I had,
Wow.
it was super fast, way faster than it used to be. And that was with the metal load balancer set up. So it would automatically load balance the pods, even from a network perspective, because the built-in load balancer, it works for small stuff, but I want it to be a little bit more full featured. So I put Metal LB in place, and I set up Rancher, which is basically a web UI for managing multiple Kubernetes clusters. So I was impressed. Like an hour and 15 minutes, hour and 30 minutes, fully functional cluster up and running. And I'm like, maybe I'll just keep this thing running at this point because I've got it running on old hardware. I have a really beefy Debian box in the basement. I've got 2 of the nodes running as virtual machines on that box. That machine has a ton of memory in it, like over 100 gigs or something like that. But my plan is probably in the next 3 or 4 months, I'm going to get a couple of Zima boards, little micro servers. They're like Raspberry Pis, basically, but they are x86 based, essentially,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're AMD 64 architecture. And I think I'm going to get a couple of those and just add them to that existing cluster and just keep it around because I don't know. I'm having a lot of fun with a local Kubernetes cluster for the first time in a long time lately. Like I said, it's all the distributed system stuff I've done has been in cloud infrastructure and Azure, AKS, that type of stuff. So anyway, very Kubernetes oriented nerd hour for me this week. So
It's
that's what I've
very,
been working
very
on.
cool. Last time I heard somebody trying to spin up Kubernetes on premises, this was a long time ago. They would be in pre-COVID, so 2019 or something. There was a group at the conference. They said they'd spent 8 hours on trying to get it to run and had failed. Basically, they couldn't
Cool.
get it. They couldn't get it spun up and working. So an hour and 15 and working. It's good. Well done.
It's so easy now, and it's like everybody that's on the show, they know I'm a Hyper-V guy. They know I'm a virtual machine guy. I have been for a long time. But like a fully functional Kubernetes cluster, how easy it is to spin up workloads, how easy it is to add and remove nodes, and the networking, the load balancing, the clustering, all that stuff is just done for me just by adding a node to a cluster. Like I, I can't believe these words are going to come out of my mouth, but virtual machines feel almost clunky all of a sudden. So
Yeah, well, I mean, they are. They
they
are.
are. Yeah.
The only thing is, though, that the cluster you've just built, the isolation for containers
Yep.
is fine if you're going to run your own code and you have
Yep.
complete control of your environment.
Exactly.
But if you're going to run any other code in there, then you got trouble because there's no isolation. I mean, there is isolation, but it's not good isolation. It's
And
not a
there's
secure boundary.
Yeah, and there's ways that you can set up isolation and do multi-tenant hosting on the same Kubernetes cluster. And I spent a lot of time at KubeCon last week talking with vendors that handled some of that stuff, and it was really interesting to hear about their solutions. It's amazing the ecosystem that has sprung up around Kubernetes.
Mm.
And the other thing I kind of dug into just out of curiosity was, I'm like, oh, okay, Kubernetes ultimately sprang from Google, right?
Mhm.
They had what it was used to be called like Borg, I think is what it was
Borg, yeah.
called.
Yeah, that's right.
And I'm like, how the heck did Google not monetize this in some way, shape, or form? Because it basically it's an operating system for the data center, essentially, is what it is when you get right down to it. And I saw an article that made a very good point in that if they did monetize it, it probably would not have seen the success that it
No,
has
no,
because you
that's
wouldn't have
right.
had the adoption,
I was just going to say, you wouldn't have had the adoption. It wouldn't have become as popular as it is, for sure. I mean, certainly in the early days, I remember writing articles about different orchestrators for Kubernetes back in the
Yeah.
day, and none of those orchestrators are around today. And you wouldn't
Yep.
have had that. And also remember, Google is a marketing company. They're an advertising company.
Right.
That's what they do. They don't sell software. I mean, they try to sell G Suite, but whatever.
Right.
Let's move on from that. That's political. Let's avoid that conversation.
Right.
Move on to the topic of the day.
That's right. That's right. And we are, of course, talking about all of the new stuff that came out from Microsoft Ignite. So I am trying to make use of more of the features that we have in our recording platform. So I am going to share the screen that has the book of news up in my browser here. And so, folks, if you're listening, on one of the audio only platforms, again, I'm going to put a link to the Ignite book of news in the show notes. So you can take a look at that. But, we'll be sure to be descriptive as we move through the list here. And so I've got this, basically scrolled down to the very first item here. And, well, if you're listening or watching the episode, you can probably guess what the main topic of Ignite was this year.
Let me guess. It's Hyper-V. It's got nothing to do with AI. It's got nothing to do with agents.
Well, let's put it this way,
Hyper-V on
Paul.
premises.
If I played a drinking game and I took a drink every time somebody said AI, I would be dead.
Yeah.
So,
This would be a very interesting podcast, I think, if we did that. There'd be a lot of drinking here.
right. And I'll have to put this in the show notes too. I stumbled across a YouTube video where somebody basically took, during the keynote, every time somebody said AI or agent or Copilot, anytime any of those words were mentioned, they shoved them all together in just, one single video, all just those words by themselves. The video was almost 4 minutes long. So I don't know, what, 90-minute, 2-hour keynote at most, and there's 4 minutes of just those 3 words. Pretty crazy. Anyway,
Yeah.
so yes, AI was, of course, the big topic, right? And arguably, there's some very cool stuff that Microsoft has come out with. And the other thing I will say about the book of news here is, I've seen several of the items on this list, and I've dug into several of them. I have not, by any means, looked at every single thing on this list yet. And so some of this will be me actually, reacting right here on the show. But I'll start with the very first one mentioned here, arguably maybe the biggest announcement here, and that is Microsoft Agent 365. And essentially what this is it's a control plane for agents inside of the Microsoft ecosystem, right? So
Yeah.
Microsoft is pushing AI agents, agents here, agents there, agents that do this, just all kinds of agents everywhere. And so when I started seeing the news about them pushing agents, immediately my brain went to like, okay, well, if everybody and their brother are going to be running agents, how am I going to manage this? Right?
Mm-hmm.
How am I going to get my hands wrapped around this? How am I going to secure it? All that stuff, right? All those questions, and that's basically what Agent 365 does. I forget exactly how many. There was one screenshot they had in the in the keynote. And it was basically, there's in the UI they were at, there was a counter for total number of agents in the environment. And it was like 70,000 agents in their demo environment or something like that. So gives
Yeah,
you an idea of the scale that we could potentially run into, right? So I don't know if
there
you've
is.
had a chance to look at this one, Paul.
I have. There's a lot. I will also mention that, again, since Ignite was literally this week, both Andy and I will be sort of reacting in real time here. I have dug into some of these things. Some of these things I knew were coming. And I have dug into some of it, but a lot is very new, and we haven't got all the sort of technical details absorbed yet.
Right. Right.
I do want to point out that if you're an MSP or you support clients internally in your company, users and users in your company, there are two things you want to look at. The first one is this. So if you have access to the admin portal, so admin.cloud.microsoft, or what used to be called admin.microsoft.com, but they're redirecting now, there is a new, like you've got users and devices and teams and groups and billing and all that. There's a new sort of menu item there called Copilot. It's the only one that gets a colored icon. All the other ones just get a gray and line picture, but Copilot actually gets a colored icon. And under there, you have overview, agents, connectors, search, billing and usage, and settings. And under settings, there's a good couple of dozens of settings to go and look at. So that's there now in your admin portal, and you want to go and look at that. That's number one. And in my list, I have 131 agents listed as potential that I could install in my environment. And I haven't touched anything. So I don't have 700, but I've got 131, including from a lot of third-party companies. The second thing you want to do is, which comes a little bit further down in the list here, is, and we knew this was coming. They'd announced this before Ignite. Every user of Microsoft 365 is going to get Copilot in Word, Excel, PowerPoint.
Yep.
It's going to show up on the right. Whether you have a license or not, it's going to show up, and in Outlook, which means that everybody gets Copilot. The only difference is that if you have the paid for license behind the scenes, the add-on Microsoft 365 Copilot license, not Copilot Chat, which is the free one, you get a Copilot that understands all your data. So you can say, look through my documents in OneDrive and find all the contracts with Contoso and draft me a new contract based on these parameters. When you're on the free license, you can work with the Copilot and chat to it and draft you documents and whatever based on what you already have open in Word. Right. Or in Excel or in PowerPoint or whatever it is, right? But it doesn't have access to all your email, doesn't have access to all your SharePoint documents that you can see. It doesn't have access to your OneDrive in the same way. So that's the difference in the licensing.
Yeah.
But if you're an MSP, you want to make sure to tell your users, because they're all going to get Copilot and they're going to go, well, where did Copilot come from? Or what can I do with it? So you want to do a little bit of communication there for them.
And I think the other thing I would advise MSPs or enterprise IT teams that might be listening as well, users are going to start seeing it there and they're going to start trying to use it. And all of a sudden, people are going to start asking for increased and higher tier Copilot licenses, right?
Which is why it's there. But that's a different conversation.
That's a whole, yeah, exactly. That's a whole other thing. I'm sure there's something further on down the list. I know that we're going to come back to that at some point. So
we are, absolutely.
Anyway, so yeah, and I'm sure I'll mention this later on at some point too, but when I look at the number of agents that could be potentially flying around doing their own things, right? I mean, even with all of the governance and security tools and the management tools they provided for this, maybe it's because, I've been in IT for a while, I've been in security for a while. I still think we're opening a can of worms here. I still think there are going to be threat vectors that we don't even know about yet as part of this, but that's just me.
No, it's not just you. I think that's everybody. That is definitely a worry for me as well. Do want to point out that behind this Microsoft 365 agent is also Entra ID or Entra Agent ID. So not only do you see all the agents in your Microsoft 365 portal, and you can block and allow and set settings for these. So you have some control as an admin person, and you want to go and have that control because it is on by default, right? Like people are going to be installing these agents unless you tell them not to or block them from doing that.
Right.
But the second thing is that every agent that gets added this way Every agent that your users create in Copilot Studio, the no-code, low-code environment or the no-code environment where they can create agents, and every agent that you create with what used to be called Azure AI Foundry, which is now Microsoft AI Foundry,
Yep.
where you have a bit more coding, a bit more control from the Azure side of creating agents. All of those agents will get an ID in Entra. And that's another important point. This is a new type of ID. They're not an app, right? They're not a user. They're not a device account. They're not a group, but they are a different type of account. And so you will be able to apply policies around those in Entra ID. Early days yet, but this is how you can then govern and manage them.
Right. Right. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, especially with all the agents that are going to be flying around there, right? So I mean, speaking of agents, scrolling down the list here, right? So, there's mention of sales development agents. I see sales here, and I just kind of continued scrolling on. I
Yeah,
didn't look a
keep
whole much
scrolling.
further. What's that?
Keep scrolling. It's in Dynamics, so keep scrolling.
Exactly. That's kind of where I was. I'm like, oh, that's a Dynamics thing. I don't know many sysadmins that do a whole lot with Dynamics, but I
That
could be wrong.
I give everyone.
So we got agents in Microsoft Teams channels now work with other agents and apps. So I mean, there's a lot of the stuff in this list, and maybe you're in the same place as I am, Paul, that basically amounts to agents either being added to existing M365 apps or features being added for agents to work with each other. When I
Yeah,
looked through this list the first time, that's one of the big takeaways for me. I was just like, oh, they are building this entire agent ecosystem. Basically, is what they're doing.
yeah, yeah. That's absolutely right. And
And
that's really just following what the rest of the industry is doing. It's not like Microsoft is innovating here per se, like every other company, AI company is doing the same thing. It's all about the agents doing stuff on their own.
exactly. So, let's see. There's a couple of things I really wanted to highlight. I'm going to scroll through some of these.
There on that point, just a
Sure.
very quick note for sysadmins. If you're a Teams administrator or you're a SharePoint administrator, there is an agent coming to the SharePoint Admin Center and the Teams Admin Center. This does not rely on Security Copilot, so you can talk to this thing and it can help you set up, policies in Teams or SharePoint settings and that sort of stuff, right? So there are agents coming there. As far as I know, they're not there yet, but they're coming.
Coming. Yep, exactly. And I think that was another theme I saw too, is that we'll get to it a little bit later with Azure Copilot, but there's been a lot added to assist admins in setting up infrastructure and security to best practices. And we'll get to that as we kind of scroll through stuff here. Let's see. So new Copilot chat value. So we talked about this already, right? So
With that,
let's see. Introducing Word Excel. We talked about this already. And agent added to PowerPoint, Excel, and Word. So updates. So we mentioned Copilot in Outlook already. So no reason to talk about that. I just want to make sure that there's none of them that I have. That I wanted to make sure we covered that we are skipping over here. So
we
voice and
could mention briefly voice in Microsoft
Yep.
365 Copilot has been coming for a while. Again, it's not something brand new for Ignite, but it does allow you to literally talk to Copilot rather than type.
Yep, which is a big one there. Let's see. 365 Copilot can now create pages. So,
Mhm.
if it's not a new agent or you know, a new integration, it's a new capability, right? Because we have had some of this stuff already, but there's been limitations. Well, now 365 Copilot chat can create pages. Um,
You want to stop on this one for 1 second.
yep,
I do want to mention two things here. The first one is, and it's actually been mentioned in several of these bullet points already. So Microsoft has something called they call the Frontier program, which of course ties into when they talk about a frontier company or a frontier enterprise. A
yep,
frontier enterprise in Microsoft's language is a new company that builds everything off AI and they run the whole thing on AI. And it's not a Microsoft invention; it's a industry invention. And somebody is saying that the next unicorn, the next $1 billion company is going to be one person that builds that sort of company all relying on AI. That's a bit, IT industry hyperbolic, whatever rubbish. But
Yeah.
there is a frontier program that you need to be aware of. It's a bit like Windows Insiders, right? You get to see stuff a little bit earlier than other people. The frontier program is for AI and agents. So if you turn on that your tenant is available for Frontier, you can turn on some new agents that are in preview, and then you can also roll it out to a select group of people. So that's number one. And then number two is that if you are in the Frontier program, you can start using OpenAI's Sora version 2 video model. And frankly, I wonder how many board office people are going to start creating videos of their colleagues doing stuff they shouldn't be doing and seeing if they can get away with it in a video generation model. I really don't know. That's me being, less than impressive with human nature overall. But anyway,
Yeah, I mean,
videos is possible now.
yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, from a security perspective, that would be something that I would have my eye on as a security team. So
Yeah, I would too.
we'll see. So a couple other things added here, right? So SharePoint page and list creation come into Copilot chat. So again, new capabilities.
This
Let's
one we want to
see.
mention, Copilot,
Yes,
Microsoft 365
exactly.
Copilot Business. So as you all know, or as most of you probably do know, Microsoft 365 Copilot is an add-on license, $30 a month per user per month. And you have to pay per year. So it's a fairly large investment, right?
It is. Yep.
If you have a lot of users that you want to roll it out to. So we now have Microsoft 365 Copilot Business at 21 users per month, and up to 300 users. I have not investigated the exact licensing details here, whether you can only add this if you already have business premium or whatever the limits are. I haven't investigated yet, but there is a blog post on it.
I think the interesting wording here for me was for $21 per user monthly. So is that a monthly charge and they're not requiring the annual? I remember I dug into the blog post here really quick because there was mention of business premium, business standard right here. So choose the plan that best fits your business. So they've got a couple of different examples here, right? So Microsoft 365 Business Basic and Copilot Business. So looks like it's not tied to a specific version of business because they mentioned basic, standard, and premium here. So
Yeah, although that does sound like if you have a small business that have chosen the advanced security features and that are on Microsoft 365 E5, for example,
yep.
I have clients in that boat. It looks like they can't get Copilot Business because they're already paying Microsoft a truckload of money for other stuff. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Yes, it is right there. Requires a Microsoft 365 business license as a prerequisite. Business Basic, Business Standard, or Business Premium. So if you're on something else, you can't have this one. So, okay, whatever.
More Microsoft licensing complexity. So
Yep.
good times. Let's see. So now there's a whole bunch of stuff here for Power Platform. So Power Platform updates allow makers to make to more easily build and govern apps. So aging capabilities, AI capabilities baked into the Power Platform. So
And they have an MCP server for the Power Platform.
Yep.
So that's another cool feature.
So Model Context Protocol, for those folks that may not know what MCP stands for, essentially it's a hook I can call for AI purposes, right?
And you can talk to it in natural language rather
Yep.
than talking
Yep.
to an API where you need to format your questions exactly as the API
And
expects them.
I'm glad you brought that up because that is an important distinction, right? It's not like I'm calling a REST API or something like that. That natural language makes a big difference.
Yep.
Let's see, maker and admin improvements in Copilot Studio. So there was a lot of talk about Copilot Studio and the improvements that they're making there. So, I'm not going to dig into that a lot because I don't do a whole lot with Copilot Studio myself. Copilot Studio in 365 adds file creation, context access. So again, new capabilities with, again, surprise, AI. Dataverse powers data connectivity across more apps, agentic workflow. Okay, so we can glaze past this entire section, right? Dynamics. I'm not a
Let's please,
dynamics guy. I don't know about you, Paul.
please glaze past it. That's fine.
Okay,
Now,
so
this one is really important.
yes.
There's one. So, Microsoft Baseline Security Mode. So, to give everybody a little bit of a background here, if you're a Microsoft 365 admin in any shape or form, you probably already are aware that there are lots and lots and lots of settings in lots and lots of different places inside of Microsoft 365 and SharePoint and OneDrive and Teams and Entra ID and. They have had an issue, I would say, overall, as taking a step back as somebody who has Microsoft 365 deployed for all my clients. It's basically an enterprise product that, in my case and in most MSPs worldwide, we're trying to squeeze into an SMB space, a small and medium business. And to do that, we have to be across a lot of very deep technical complexity. And so there's a number of third-party sort of tenant manager tools, let's say, group them together under that heading, that sort of take care of some of these settings across some of these workloads. Again, I have not dug into this in detail, but it very much looks like Microsoft is saying, hey, we're going to build an engine into Microsoft 365 that allows you to inventory these settings. Doesn't cover everything yet, obviously, because it's in preview, but we're going to have an engine that looks at all these settings, and then you can compare them against best practices or templates so that you can sort of bring your tenant into security best practices much more easily. And that's really important. And it's going to be an interesting thing what's going to happen to all these third-party tenant managers. They obviously do more things than just this, but still, it's a bit of a shakeup. It's going to be interesting.
Right, exactly. And the question I have here is, because of course we have security defaults, right? When I spin out a new 365 tenant today, right, I get security defaults. I wonder how aligned this will be with the existing security defaults. It's one of the things that I'm going to have to dig into.
My guess will be that security default works really well where they work, but they are very inflexible.
Yep.
Right? Like it's either on or off. Like if you have it on, you get what they get in security default. That's the settings, right? And as an example, none of my clients have security defaults on.
Right.
Because I want to use conditional access policies and I want to customize.
Yep.
And I need to do that, right? So as soon as you turn off security default, it's very black and white, right? Now you're on your own and you have potentially dozens of conditional access policies you want to create. You have probably hundreds of settings across Entra and Admin Center and everywhere else that you want to go and set and make sure they're set to the right value. It gets real complicated real fast. So security default works great if you can live with it. But for every other business, you sort of, up until now, you've been on your own in some respects.
Exactly. Yep. So, let's see. We got Agent Dashboard provides centralized agent reporting. Updates to Purview address key security issues. So, I didn't look at this particular Purview one. Have you looked at this yet, Paul?
Not this specifically, but I sort of knew this was coming because this I have actually seen in private preview before they came out. Basically, this is an ongoing train from Microsoft. So Purview, for those of you who don't know, is Microsoft's umbrella term for all their data management tools. So there is insider risk management, there's data loss prevention, there's information security, there's labeling of documents, and a whole heap of other things, right, that we're not going to go into now for time purposes. But ever since they started with Microsoft 365 Copilot, they built in features into Purview, including data security posture management, DSPM, that allows Purview to monitor the prompts that are put in, the answers that are generated from these, and now the agents as well, and what output they generate, to put guardrails around it. So, for example, if you have a project internally that is very hush-hush in your company, you can set up DLP for Microsoft 365 Copilot to block any queries against that particular term, for example. So this is really just a continuation of that. I
Right.
do want to point out as well, if you have the information protection / purview browser extension installed in Chrome and Edge or wherever, it will actually bring a lot of this protection to third-party LLM agents as well. So if your users are uploading sensitive data to OpenAI, ChatGPT, you can block that, or Claude or whatever. You can actually block
Right.
that sort of stuff. So there's some very cool stuff in there,
Yeah.
but it's a whole area to keep track of as well.
Right. Right. All right. So we get to the second section here of the book of news. So AI opportunities and starting with investments in AI. Right. So
Mhm.
a lot of this stuff is not what I would call sysadmin
No,
centric. Right. So it's a
keep
lot of,
scrolling. Keep
yeah,
scrolling.
it's a lot of, investments, and we're working on this type of stuff. Right.
Yeah.
Um, Now we get to Azure. And there was one section there was one thing especially I wanted to cover in Azure here, and this wasn't it, but here we've got Microsoft Foundry adds unified MCP tools for securing and customizing agents. Um,
Hang on,
yeah,
scroll. I got one thing to point out here. So, for those of you who don't know, Microsoft Foundry used to be called Azure AI Foundry, is now the place to build agents if you're more of a developer-y person,
yep,
right? You go into the Azure portal and you got this whole environment there to build agent, and you can also run them locally. So, if you got an MPU on your local PC, you can distribute these agents to the agents you create, your custom agents, to run on local hardware, right? Without having to upload data to the cloud, which is very cool. But even cooler here is, so you've had a Logic app integration in Azure AI Foundry for quite some time. So let's break that sentence down. For those of you who don't know, Logic apps have been in Azure for probably 10 years now.
yeah,
It's a
long
low
time.
code, no code environment where you sort of wire boxes together to make automated workflows happen. To build automations from system to system. They have a lot of connectors into third-party systems, SAP, Salesforce, HubSpot, Slack, whatever, anything you can think of, right? And they mention here 1,400 different systems. So that's been there for quite some time. What they've added now is turned those into MCP endpoints so that you don't need to figure out exactly how to talk to Salesforce. You can just do it in natural language because it exposes the endpoint as an MCP endpoint.
Yep. And I mean, I'm not a developer, but if I was, I mean, that makes things a lot easier for me because, if I can talk to an integration in natural language and not have to, learn the native API for whatever it is I'm talking to, that makes things a lot easier for me personally.
Yeah.
Let's see. Model router and Microsoft Foundry now generally available. Anything you see here you want to cover, Paul, just holler at
I
me.
will mention model router just because it's cool. It is not
Sure.
SysAdmin, but it's very cool.
Okay.
So, as you probably know by now, LLMs are growing in complexity, capacity, things they can do, different strengths and weaknesses. You have your small language models that are good in particular niche cases. So, one of the things that Microsoft added a while ago is a model router. So, you line up whatever LLMs that you think is going to help your end users do whatever they need to do. You put the model router in front, and based on the query that's coming in, it will route it to the most appropriate back-end LLM. And that helps you save money because, yes, maybe Chat GPT 5.1 is the best one across the board, but it's also the most expensive one for most
Right.
things. And in most cases, you don't need it. If it's a simple query, you need something simpler. And that's why you have these different models, and you can just put the model router in front of it and see how much money you're going to save.
Yeah, and so here it's got the model router now includes access to 12 models and the various GPTs. You've got the open source GPT, DeepSeek, Llama, Grok is on that list as well too. Wow, so all the big ones basically.
Yeah,
So
if you want some Nazi propaganda, go for Grok. Um,
you're not wrong.
sorry, anyway.
That's That's a whole different episode. I still can't believe the stuff that Grok has come up with, but yeah, that's a whole different thing.
Mhm. Anyway, we keep going. Foundry agent service again is not for developers, so we can keep scrolling past that
Yep.
as well.
Agent service.
Yeah, can keep
Let's
going.
see. Unlocks intelligence for agents, unifying context across platforms. More Foundry stuff here. Control plan, developer stuff. Um, I'm not a database or analytics guy, so
No, I know enough about Cosmos DB to know that it's cool, but no, there's nothing here. If you're a SQL Server guy, there's some new stuff in SQL Server 2025. The big news here really is that it's taking off like nobody's business. They don't mention it here, but I read it somewhere else. SQL Server 2025 on Linux is taking off. Lots of
I'd
people want to.
heard that as
Yep,
well.
yep. So makes sense. If you want the
Yeah,
best database and you want to run it on Linux, now you can.
now
There's
you
some
can.
more open source database stuff here,
Yeah,
but again, it's not really in most sysadmins' wheelhouse.
Azure App
Um,
Service.
no, keep going.
Let's see. Updated Azure Copilot with specialized agents available in private preview. So this is infra. And I remember there was something in this section I wanted to make sure we
So they're
covered.
going to build Azure Copilot. So we've had Azure Copilot for a couple
Yep.
of years now. So that's a Copilot built into the Azure portal. So you can go in and say, hey, I need to create a Kubernetes clusters that does X, Y, Z. You can put that in, right? And you can talk to it and it comes back with suggestions. Can create an ARM template for you. You can customize it, spit it out as a bicep template, for example, anything like that. But
Yep.
now they're integrating that into the CLI and the PowerShell interface as well. So that's going to be really interesting for those who like to work at the command line.
Yeah, and I think this was the big thing I wanted to make sure we mentioned here was the new Copilot, the new Azure Copilot agents that were included.
Mhm.
So the new agents will assist admins with things like deployments in Azure, migrations, optimization, observability, basically all the things that they've got here. And so the key thing for me that really stood out was mention of the well-architected framework. If you're not
Yeah.
familiar with the well-architected framework it's basically a collection of best practices and architecture guidance that Microsoft has when it comes to deploying workloads and infrastructure inside of Azure, right? And so you've got agents in Copilot specifically for Azure that will help you deploy and migrate workloads based on those guidelines, right? Which I felt like was that was an eye-catching thing for me as I was scrolling through this list.
I think this is very cool. If you're an Azure infrastructure guy, one of the bullet points is resiliency, tying nicely back to our earlier conversation in the news section. So there is a resiliency agent that's going to give you recommendations for how to alter your workloads to make them more resilient. So that's really, really interesting, I think.
For sure. For sure. I was glad to see that one there. Um, let's see. So Azure Boost now features improved remote storage and network throughput. So in preview, so Boost now supports storage throughput of up to 20 gigabits and up to 1 million remote storage IOPS. A million remote storage IOPS.
Yeah.
I
And network bandwidth of up to 400 gigabits per second. For those of you who don't know, Microsoft actually open sources all their server specs for the hardware that they run in Azure, and one of the things they have is a what are those things called? A chip that you can reprogram. Oh, my old brain, things disappear out of my head. It's a reprogrammable bit of hardware that you can put in here. And that means that I can then update the software to make it do, in this case, storage, networking improvements, that sort of thing. And hence it's called Boost because it literally boosts your workloads.
Yep. Man, I see a million I still can't get over that number. I mean, that's an incomprehensible number, right? A million
Yep.
IOPS. Anyway. Azure Cobalt, so their next generation Cobalt CPU, specifically for their cloud workloads. I remember at Ignite last year, I was actually at that Ignite physically. They made a big deal when the Cobalt 100 was announced, and well, we've got Cobalt 200 now, right? So,
So for those of you who don't know, the Cobalt is built on the ARM architecture.
yep,
And we've covered in previous episodes that Intel is in trouble and ARM is marching forward, the ARM architecture. So it's more power efficient, etc. So yeah, the fact that Microsoft makes their own CPUs is kind of cool.
yep, for sure. It's very Apple-esque, isn't it? Right? Like,
Mhm.
okay, gonna build their own processors, and surprise, it's gonna be based on ARM. So it's interesting. Um, yeah, I saw Marketplace here, and I just kind of scrolled on by. I don't know if there's anything we want to cover
No, keep going.
with this, Paul.
Keep going.
Edge for business. So more
I want to spend
Copilot enhancements for Edge.
Yeah, I want to spend 1 minute on Edge for Business just so that people understand what this
Yep.
actually is and what it can do for you. With the first caveat up front, when I talk to MSP colleagues, they actually love the features that Microsoft are building into Edge for Business. And I'll cover those features in a second. But the cultural challenge of getting business users in their MSP clients to actually adopt Edge over Chrome. And the
Oh yeah.
silly thing is that in 99% of cases, that's because those users might have used the old Edge, which was a bit clunky to be fair,
Yep.
and they got burnt and they're back to Chrome because they like Chrome better. So Edge for Business is Microsoft's take on an enterprise browser, meaning a browser that you can control in a business with policies. So if your end users sign into Edge with their work or school account, you can then apply policies to that browser that controls what they can do, where they can go, what extensions they can install, etc. And what they're talking about in this particular point is also you have your Copilot mode where they're trying to turn Edge into a Copilot or an AI-powered browser. So instead of going to a search page, go to Bing or Google or whatever you go to, you ask your questions directly in the browser, and it's going to come up with the answers for you.
No. Yep. And there were quite a few different points here for Edge, right? So Edge for business to enable secure access for contractor managed devices, which a lot of us are using contractors these days. So any additional tool I can get to help me wrap my hand around that is a plus, in my opinion.
Yeah, you get
Um,
mobile application management policies from Intune, and you can apply them to those Edge browsers. So treating an Edge browser almost like their iPhone or Android
yep,
phone that they're using to access corporate email, but it's a browser. So you get some very interesting policies you can apply there.
indeed. Let's see, new features to simplify browser management. So that one's pretty self-explanatory, I think.
Mhm.
I don't remember seeing this one. Watermarking and clipboard controls available. Okay, so in preview for Edge, so watermarking and clipboard stuff. Okay, security.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I remember coming across this one, and I'm not a developer, but when I see this particular point, right, integration of Defender for cloud and GitHub project apps across lifecycle, that's a big one, right? Because I think we've talked about this on the show before, Paul, where when it comes from a security perspective, you really have to secure not just the app end to end during execution and hosting, but also during the development phase as well too, right?
Yeah.
And I like I said, not a developer, but I think this is a great idea in
Yep.
principle. Let's see. A Defender for Cloud extends posture management to serverless resources. So it's funny, we got done talking about cloud native stuff earlier in this episode, Kubernetes, containers, pods, all that type of stuff, right? So, Defender for Cloud now works for serverless resources. So,
So I'll cut in here for a second as well. One of the really important sentences in there is exposure management. So in Defender XDR, in the security.microsoft.com portal, we have had exposure management for about a year now, probably
yep,
publicly. No, excuse me. And this allows us to, and if you have any kind of input into the security of your tenants, even if you're not using Microsoft security tools, even if you're not using the Defender tool set, you should still go to this portal and have a look at exposure management. Basically, what it does is it uses an underlying graph database to track all your resources and understand the relationship between them and give you an understanding of the overall security posture of your company. Fairly recently, we now got SaaS apps in there. So you don't just understand your on-prem infrastructure and your, SharePoint and Exchange infrastructure in there and your users and identity and everything else. You also now understand all your SaaS apps. What's coming now, of course, is Defender for Cloud is now doing exposure management across all those serverless resources that you talked about in Azure. And as we can see in a later point, they're bringing Defender for Cloud into the overall Defender portal. And that then will give you a single place for all of this, plus exposure management across all your AWS, Azure, and GCP resources that you have deployed, which is very cool.
Right. For sure. Yeah. I'm always game for more security tools and better security management across resources. So
Yep.
I feel like they're filling in the gaps with this one, right?
Yep, very much so.
Unified posture management, threat protection for AI agents. So again, we've got all these agents. Well, here's some stuff to help secure it, right? So I haven't read through this one all yet. This is one of the blog posts I really want to dig into and see
Yep.
how the posture visibility works for agents, what the plans are for reducing risk, and more importantly, like how easy is it going to be? If I have 70,000 agents I have to secure, how easy is that going to be for me, right? So that's definitely something that I'm interested personally. So
Defender brings the visibility. You can actually see the prompts that people are putting in when people are trying to do prompt injection. Like if you want to be cynical and take one step backwards, basically Microsoft wants you and is forecasting that people are going to deploy a lot of AI agents to sort of become more competitive and more efficient and all that. So they want to make sure that they enable that as much as possible so businesses can do it without being scared.
Right. And I think that's the big thing, right? Is the smart businesses should be scared about doing this properly, right? But I think I'm glad that they're getting out ahead of that now as opposed to 6 months from now, right?
Yep, that's right.
Let's see. So new Defender capabilities include proactive mid-action or mid-attack action. I actually thought this was neat, this idea of predictive shielding, right? So, you've got this Defender detects an attack happening and it will actively take steps to disrupt said attack. And I mean, for sake of time, we can't go into all the specific details, right?
No, but I do want to mention this because it's very cool, actually. I read that as well. So automatic attack disruption has now been in Defender for a while.
Right.
And it will, if they have a strong enough signal, if the system has a strong enough signal, it will actually go in and isolate machines, disable user accounts, and those sorts of things. So what they're saying here is that when they have done that, they'll then look and see, okay, the attacker got to this machine. Where are they likely to move next? Let's block that path as well so that they can't pivot to there. And even cooler, it is now taking signals from AWS, Proofpoint, and Okta. So not just Microsoft signal sources, but their third-party ones, and then bringing that into the third-party attack disruption.
Right.
And I do have to mention the very last point here, because this was a private preview that I was part of, and it is unbelievably cool, especially for somebody like me who's not a KQL expert by any stretch of the imagination. So in Defender, we can do hunting. So you can go in and say, figure out, based on last 6 months data, did we ever have an attack of this thing that got revealed on Monday and we never knew that it was something malicious? You can look for files. You can look for endpoints. People clicked on a particular link, whatever. You can now do that in natural language. And I have actually tested that. So you can just type your question, right? So which devices communicated with this domain in the last 24 hours? It will write the KQL, it will run the KQL, it will tell you the answer. And it's vibe hunting, and it's very cool.
Vibe hunting. There we go.
It's the word.
That's the first time I've heard that, but it makes sense. Vibe hunting. Interesting.
Yeah, I didn't make up the word, but it's very cool.
All right, so we get to Entra enhancements now.
And this is the agent ID. We sort of already covered that back up when we talked about Microsoft Agent 365. So agents get an ID. It's really important. Then you get a bunch of agents inside of Entra. We have had the conditional access optimization agent for a while, but you're getting an identity risk, an app cycle management agent, an access review agent, and so forth. But I think time-wise, we just keep scrolling.
Yeah, exactly here. So now the Intune stuff, I'm not an Intune guy, so I didn't really look at any of these, but are there any specifically you want to cover?
Yeah, I'm an Intune guy. And if you're an Intune admin, there's some cool agents in here. They all rely on Security Copilot, so you've got to have SCUs for these. So there's a policy configuration agent, a change review agent, and a device offboarding agent. So agents everywhere. And Windows recovery environment, you can now control that from Intune at scale across your enterprise. That's cool too. Keep going.
Nice. Purview. I skimmed the Purview stuff.
Yeah, keep going. Yep. We don't need to go into that, I think, at this point. No more Purview stuff.
Security Copilot. Now, the big thing I wanted to mention for Security Copilot is it used to be you had to pay massive amounts of money for Security Copilot, right? And it was the thing for me when I start evaluating it and looking like, hey, is it worth it to put this thing in place? It was difficult to determine what my cost was even going to be, right?
Yeah.
Well, this particular announcement really caught my eye, in that Security Copilot will now be available for 365 E5 customers.
Yep. But and there's a gigantic but in there. So let me do the but. First of all, so the way Security Copilot works is that it's built on an SCU, Secure Compute Unit, $4 per SCU per hour. So you tell Security Copilot how many of these you want, and then you just pay. Then you can scale those up and down. You can do it manually, or you can have some sort of automation that during business hours you want to have 4 of these per hour, and then during off hours you want to have 1 of these per hour. But that quickly adds up. If you do this 24 by 7 by 365, it very quickly adds up. Particularly if you go over, you can then have either it stops working when you have used up your SCUs that hour, or you can have an overage one where you pay $6 per overage ones where you go over, and you can set a limit on those as well. So very expensive. So when I saw that, I got really excited, just like you read it here, right? Oh, okay. So if you have a Microsoft 365 E5 client, and I have some of those, they will get SCUs as part of their licensing. But actually what it is, it's like a drug dealer's, the first hit is free, right? Because basically you get 2.5, you divide the number of licenses you have and you divide it by 2.5, and that gives you the number of SCUs you have. So if you're a company that has 1,000 Microsoft 365 E5 users rolled out, you get 400 SCUs per month. Now that's not shabby. You could sort of do some stuff with that, although you probably use them up pretty quickly. Right. However, if you take one of my clients, for example, that is on full E5, and this is full E5 only, not the E5 security add-on, not the business premium E5 security add-on. It is only with full E5. They have 15 users that pay full licensing. That means they'll get 4 and a bit SCUs per month. And that will last about 2 hours. And then they will have used up those, or I will have used up those SCUs on their behalf. So now, if I wasn't a user who really needed SCUs, I'd then go, okay, how do I buy more? Right. Hence, first hit is free. So
and that was the disappointing thing about this particular announcement.
Very disappointing. Very, very disappointing. The one point I'll make though is that this shows that Microsoft is understanding the reality for a lot of businesses when it comes to security copilots, particularly in the small and medium business space.
Yep.
And it does show that they can build this without you having to have a security copilot SEU one at least per hour running. Because up until now, their point has been, well, you got to have one because that keeps the memory of what you've been doing in Security Copilot. If you set
Yep.
it to 0, it forgets the context. But this shows that if I've never used Security Copilot, I have 1,000 users on E5, I get 400 SEUs per month. Well, once I've used up those 400 SEUs, somehow they keep the memory of what's happening, because next month, on the 1st of next month, I will get another 400 to use. So they obviously have that system in place now. Because what I would like with Security Copilot is to be able to buy some prepaid SEUs. So I should be able to go to one of my clients and say, this month I want 20 SEUs. I just buy them. And then whether I use 5 of them on day 1 or 5 of them on day 20 of the month, and then keep using whatever I use up until I've used up my 20, then it just works, right? And then now I have a controlled cost, right? I can say to my client, hey, I'm going to buy 20 SCUs for you per month, or 10 or 15 or 50 or whatever it might be, depending on the size of the business. And I just want to prepay for those. And they just sit there. And it would be even better if they were like a prepaid credit on your smartphone, if you have to prepay, so that it accumulated to the next month if you didn't use it in month 1. Anyway, we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, the first hit is free. So, and depending on the size of the environment, like you said, you could get enough to, like you said, actually do some things, but like 4 SCUs is not gonna get you a whole lot, unfortunately. So,
Nope.
let's see. So, we've got this concept of the security store now. It's now generally available, right? So,
I was part of the private preview on this one. It is basically like a subset of the Microsoft Marketplace. Yep. So all the different security agents and security services from third parties and Microsoft available in one single place.
Yep. So we got security for AI, security dashboard for AI, designed for security and AI risk leaders. So basically, a dashboard for helping secure your AI agents, environments, that type of thing, basically, right? The thing that I found interesting here was this idea of seeing a consolidated AI risk profile. So seeing all those data points from across, I guess I would say, my AI estate. I'm interested to see what that looks like, and if I can actually build some actionable insights from that. But that's TBD, right? So that's something that caught my eye there as well. Sentinel now has some updated SIM and platform capabilities. This one I saw but did not dig into.
So they have an MCP server that's built in there, part of the private preview, but never got around to testing it because you need the thing that I couldn't roll out to one of my clients, which is the data lake. Anyway, so there's some cool stuff coming there, but there's nothing here that is revolutionary. It's sort of Sentinel just moving on as a world-leading SIEM.
Right.
MCP on Windows. So here we'll mention the controversy. So the head of Windows at the moment at Microsoft made a LinkedIn post where he said, we're going to pivot Windows to be the AI OS of the future. And the amount of angry feedback he got on that post along the lines of, stop shoving bloody AI into everything and fix the problems with Windows in the first place is probably a higher priority than having AI coming out of the ears of Windows everywhere. And I can't say I disagree with them. So, yeah, but AI is coming to Windows if it's not already there.
And the controversy aside, right? All of that stuff aside, when I look at this paired with some of their other announcements from Ignite, again, this is very clear that Microsoft wants to build an AI ecosystem. We've got all this AI tech and all these different places. Now they're laying all the framework for everything to hopefully work together, right? It's
Yeah.
all new, early days. That's why I say hopefully, but
Yeah.
they're laying the foundations for all of this to coexist and interact. So I found
That's
that
right.
interesting as
That's
well.
my take on it as well.
Um, let's see, more AI agent stuff for Windows. I think mainly that was all for Windows itself. Was just the AI agent plugins. 365 Link, getting updates and expanded availability. Link is the cloud PC built specifically for Windows 365, right? So running Windows in the cloud. Basically, it reminds me of the old Thing client days, is what it
Yeah.
reminds me of.
It's actually a very cool device. I bought one of these for one of my clients where everybody at that client is using Windows 365 exclusively. So the boss now has one of these. He's had it for 6 months. He's happy with it. It's a tiny little box. If you ever needed to work from home, you could literally just unplug it, take it home, plug it into power at home, and he's good to go. While we're on Windows 365, before I forget, because I do want to come back to it, the very last thing I have to mention is called Project Opal, I think. So basically, as part of the whole AI push, what do you do when you want an AI agent to interact with a website that does not have an API and does not have an MCP server? Right. So you want the weekly report, and the only way to get to it is to go to the website, click on reports, click on download the weekly report, and then turn it into a PDF and upload it somewhere. What you use is something called a computer use agent, which is not new, but Microsoft is pushing it heavily at Ignite.
Right.
So basically, you can go into Copilot Studio, you can say, I want an agent that goes to website X to do this, this, and this, something along the lines of what I just described, in natural language. It will then connect to either a machine you provide using Azure Virtual Desktop or some other way, or a Windows 365 Windows machine that runs in the cloud. And that machine will go and run that job for you and will go and click on the website and download the PDF and put it somewhere. So they call that Opal. And Opal then is where you have like a fleet or a farm of these Windows 365 PCs that are running all these computer use agent jobs in the cloud.
Right. More orchestration. So,
Yep.
and different kinds of orchestration. So that's always nice to see. New Windows AI APIs. So again, AI stuff baked into Windows. Auto patch, update readiness,
If you
streamline.
use auto patch from
Yep.
Intune, you should look at readiness. Basically, it's going to tell you, it's going to work out using AI whether rolling out the new quality update this month to this fleet of 500 machines across your business is going to cause a problem on some of these machines. So it's going to sort of investigate the readiness before it rolls it out to give you an even smoother experience. Auto patch is great. You should look at it if you're not using a third-party patching solution.
Yeah. I think it was Eric and I. We were talking about auto patch weeks and weeks and weeks ago in relation to WSUS. So
Yeah.
we do have previous episodes where we've talked about auto patch. So I'll find those and link those in the show notes as well, folks. So with new features to help combat system disruptions. So
Point in time restore
Yep.
is interesting. So
Yep.
this is a new feature that allows you to sort of roll back to your Windows machine to a point in time. Again, haven't looked at the defaults or the details of that. Same thing for cloud rebuild. So you have a sort of an image of the machine in the cloud that you can apply to a machine to make sure that it becomes working again if it's playing up. But again, haven't tried any of that. Haven't gone dug into it.
Yeah. We just got our last couple here. And I know we're at an hour and 20, so we'll wrap things up here pretty quick. But I don't think there was anything else on here I really wanted to mention. Do you have anything else remaining in the list that you felt strongly about talking about, Paul?
No, I don't
Okay.
think so. Nearly at the bottom of the page.
Yeah.
If you are using Windows 365, you can now use it with external identities. That's been coming for a while. And some
Yeah.
businesses will love that because it means you can hire a contractor, give them a Windows machine that is part of your network, has access to your resources, but they don't run it. They just connect to it. And as soon as you disable their guest access, they can't get to that machine again.
Right. Right. So I think it's pretty clear, as we saw as we scrolled through the list. Everything was about AI, and more AI. So
And agents, don't
and
forget.
agents and Copilot, and I'm gonna have to link that YouTube video I found because it was very comical and 4 minutes long. So anyway, well, Paul, I appreciate you taking the time as always to come and share your knowledge and your insights on this, especially helpful on that stuff that you've been, part of the preview on as well too. Because there's so much of that stuff on the Microsoft side that there, there's no one person that can do all of the previews, right? It's about
Nope.
impossible these days. So good having you as always, my friend.
No, this was a great session. Thank you, everybody who hung in there and listened to it, listen to us talking through it. Obviously, whatever role you have, you will have a different interest when you look at the book of news.
Yep.
But there is some good stuff there. And even if you're not a Microsoft person per se, I don't think you can work in IT today without some part of the Microsoft ecosystem touching your professional work. So better
Yep.
be aware of it.
Exactly. And it's good to keep an eye on that and just know where the industry's going, right? So, well, we'll let everybody get back to their day. It's been a long one here, so hope you enjoyed today's episode. And again, be sure to check out that book of news. I'll put that in the show notes. With that, folks, we'll let you get back to your day. Stay safe out there. We'll catch you again next week for a future episode of SysAdmin Weekly. Have a good one.